الحمد لله على إحسانه وشكر له على تفضله وامتنانه ولا إله إلا الله تعظيما لشأنه وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله داعي إلى رضوانه وعلى آله وأصحابه وإخوانه أما بعد. إخواني في الله, in the year 2010, Dubai was declared to have the tallest building in the world. In the year 2010, Dubai was declared to have the tallest structure ever built by the human beings, the Burj Al Arab. That's over 800 meters long. When their fellow brothers from the Middle East had this, they started also a competition. So Jeddah, the Prince Walid ibn Talal, he announced, Dubai have 800 meters and that is the tallest building in the world. I'm going to build the tallest building in the world in Jeddah. I'm going to build the Kingdom Tower. I'm going to make sure it is 1,000 meters long. I'm going to make sure it is 1 kilometer long. The tallest building in the world. Their brothers in the next country, Kuwait, he said, the Saudis want to build the tallest building in the world. That will be 1,000 kilometers long. 1,000 meters long, 1 kilometer long. We shall build the tallest building in the world in Kuwait. We shall build the building that has never been seen. We shall build 1,000 plus 1. We shall build 1,001 meters. Qatar on the other side also, they said, we are the richest country in the world per person. We have the most money per person in the entire world. We shall build the tallest building in the world, but we shall keep it a secret. We shall keep it a secret. We shall build it in a place called Diyar in Qatar. So, Ikhwani fillah, this is amongst the signs of the Day of Judgment. The Prophet ﷺ, one day he was sitting with his companions. Then a person who is white dressed with very dark hair comes and he sits next to the Prophet ﷺ. He sits with excellent manners. فَأَسْنَدَ رُكْبَتَيْهِ إِلَى رُكْبَتَيْهِ. He put his knees near the knees of the Prophet ﷺ. And he asked him a number of questions. He asked him, what is Islam? What is Iman? What is Ihsan? Tell me about the religion of Islam. So he tells Prophet ﷺ, answers this man all the questions he asks. Then this man asks a strange question. He asks the Prophet ﷺ, tell me when the day of judgment is. When the day of judgment is. The man says to him, the person who is asking me is not more knowledgeable. The person you're asking is not more knowledgeable than the one who's asking. I do not know anything of the day of judgment. The Prophet ﷺ, this man asks him, فَأَخْبِرْنِي عَنْ أَشْرَاطِهَا عَنْ إِمَارَاتِهَا. Tell me, what are the signs of the day of judgment? Tell me some of the signs that I can know that Qiyamah is coming close. He says, عليه الصلاة والسلام, إذا تطاول رعاء البهائم في البنيان فذاك من أشراطها. He says in a different hadith, وأن ترى الحفاة العراة العالة رعاء الشاة يتطاولون في البنيان. He says, when you see the shepherds, the people who are barefoot, the one who look after the sheep and the goats, يتطاولون في البنيان. They compete with each other in the building of tall buildings. Are you together, dear brothers in Islam? So from the signs of the Day of Judgment, التطاول في البنيان. The people will compete in the building. Who is going to build the tallest building in the world? The Prophet ﷺ, he was asked, من أصحاب الشاء الجياع الحفاء الجياع العالة. He says, who are these people you're talking of, O Prophet of Islam? The people you say, they are the ones who look after the sheep. They are the ones who are hungry. They are the ones who are barefoot. Who are these people, O Prophet ﷺ? The Prophet says to them, Al-Arab, the Arabs. If anyone, I mentioned this point previously, from amongst the miracles of Prophet ﷺ and the things that show clearly the truthfulness of his prophethood is the clear prophethood he shows us. He gives us signs of things that have not happened and his words are very clear. No doubt. He says the Arabs will compete in building tall buildings. Muslims will engage in riba. Muslims will start drinking alcohol. People will start competing in building beautiful mosques. His message is very clear, alayhi salatu wasalam. If someone was just to see this one side, it is sufficient for him to accept Islam if he has a sincere heart. For this is a man, the Prophet ﷺ, who mentioned these words 1400 years ago, when there was no Burj al-Arab, when there was no Jeddah Tower, there was no Burj al-Mubarak in Madinat al-Harir in Kuwait. There was no clock tower in Mecca. The clock tower in Mecca, the hotel, it's called the clock tower, is the biggest or the largest hotel of its size in the entire world. So these are from the signs of Day of Judgment. The Arabs will compete in building tall buildings. The scholars, they say, قال ابن حجر رحمه الله ومعنى تطاول في بنيان أن كل ممن كان يبني بيتا يريد أن يكون ارتفاعه أعلى من ارتفاع الآخر. He says that every person, when they build a building, he wants to compete with his fellow brother. I want my building to be larger and bigger than my fellow brothers. And we're seeing also this in our own community. A few years ago in South Sea, the tallest building was 3 floors, 4 floors. But every single year, it increases. 5, 8, 10, 12. And now our neighbor, we had a few days ago, wants to build how many floors? 15. 14 or 15? 15. So there's also the Somalis are considered from the Arab community. So there's this competition of who's going to build the tallest building. The second meaning, he says, وَيَحْتَمَلُ أَن يَكُونَ الْمُرَادْ بِالْمُبَاهَى بِهِ فِي الزِّينَةِ وَزَخْرَفَةِ. It also means that people are going to compete with how much they're going to spend in deco, in furniture and fittings, in tiles, in decoration. This is also from the signs of the Day of Judgment. أَتَطَاوُلُ فِي الْبُنْيَانِ. Sometimes, you look at if you go to countries with Islamic history, and you see some buildings, like if you go to Andalus, there's a palace called Al-Qasr Al-Hamra, the Red Palace, just outside of, I think it's outside of Ishbiliya, or outside of Qurtuba, I don't remember. This is one of the most beautiful buildings built in history. It was built by the Muslims. A palace that has never been seen to the like of till to this day. So, the Arabs in particular from the Muslim community, they have a lot of israf when it comes to this issue of spending in this dunya. They build the tallest buildings, they build the most expensive buildings. If you go to Dubai, if you go for there's a big bus trip. I went, I think 15 years ago I was on that bus. You go, they tell you that is the tallest building, that is the tallest hotel, that is the tallest office block. Everything is big, 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 big. Wallahi, I was a young man that time, but I felt that these people were like children. They're just competing with something that has no benefit. So from the signs of the Day of Judgment is that you see the Arabs competing in the building of tall buildings. We mentioned the first lecture we had, Ikhwani Fillah, it does not mean that if something is mentioned to be a sign from the signs of the Day of Judgment, it does not mean that thing is haram. Are we together? If something is mentioned to be from the signs of the Day of Judgment, it does not mean it's haram. So it is not haram for per se for a person to build a tall building. But what is not proper is you starting competing in this dunya. When you start spending all your effort in competing with your brother, how much you're going to spend on your building, or how tall your building is, or such thing, you become entrenched to the affairs of dunya and you forget your house in akhirah. One of the khulafa, I think it is Sulaiman ibn Abdul Malik, he was asked, why do we hate to die? Why do you hate to die, we as the leaders especially? He says, because you built your dunya and you destroyed your akhirah. You built your dunya and you destroyed your akhirah. These buildings, ikhwan fillah, regardless of how magnificent they are, they're still engineered by human beings. True or false? And one for akhirah, labinatu min dhahab wa labinatu min fiddah, has been prepared by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you choose, وَلَا الْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. What is in the hereafter, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for you is better than this dunya. For reference, look at the hadith of the last person to enter Jannah. Look for this hadith. The last person to enter Jannah, and compare the state of this person to the richest person in dunya. Sign number 22. Sign number 21. ولادة أمة لربتها. ولادة الأمة لربتها. Prophet ﷺ says, سأخبرك عن أشراطها إذا ولدت الأمة ربتها متفق عليه. When the female slaves give birth to their children or to their masters, that is from the signs of the day of judgment. He told Jibril alayhi salam, no? It's okay. He says to Jibril alayhi salam in the hadith, when Jibril came to him, that if you see the female slave giving birth to her master, that is from the signs of the day of judgment. The scholars, they have differed upon the meaning of this hadith. The majority of the scholars, they say that the Muslims will spread their empire so much and so wide that they will capture many female slaves. And those female slaves will give birth to children of their masters, so these children are not slaves, but they shall be in the position of their masters. I repeat, that Islam will spread very wide, and they will capture many slaves and many prisoners of war. These women who will be female slaves to their masters, they will give birth to the children of the masters. So the children will take over the position of being their masters. That is the majority of the opinion of the scholars. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, he mentions almost 4 other meanings. And he says that the best meaning of all is that before the day of judgment, there shall be a lot of bad treatment of mothers especially. So much so that a child will be treating the mother as if the mother is the slave. So from the signs of the day of judgment is that a female slave will give birth to her master, or master will have a woman under him who will give birth to him, and that person will be like the position of a slave. And Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani says that is because of uquq al-walidain. People will be very disrespectful to their parents. Sign number 22, and it's the last sign we take it today. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام لا تقوم الساعة حتى يكثر الهرج. He says the hour will not come until there is a lot of harj. قيل يا رسول الله, what is the meaning of harj? He says al-qatlu al-qatlu, killing. There shall be a lot of killing. So this is sign number 22. There shall be a lot of killing. If you look, Ikhwan Fillah, also in history, especially in our century, this century, the last 100 years, 150 years, is one of the bloodiest periods of bloodshed in history. Many people lost their lives through the actions of their fellow human beings within this last 150 years. You have World War I. World War I was 1914 to 1918. Lost over 20 million people. Then after that came World War II. Hitler invaded Poland in 1939 until 1945. The Americans, in one day, they bombed Hiroshima, killed hundreds of thousands of people. They bombed another place in Japan, Nagasaki, killed hundreds of thousands of people. In just 2 acts, they killed over 1 million people in Japan. In Germany, they killed, in a place called Dresden, they killed hundreds of thousands of people just in one day from the acts of human beings. Also in the last century, you have one of the worst leaders ever to be produced in the world, one of the most evil men, King Leopold of Belgium. This man, King Leopold, la'natullah alayh, he came to Africa, he took Zaire, the Congo, as his personal property. And he persecuted the Africans in Congo so much, he killed over 15 million of them. And no one reads about this history. You have Hitler. Hitler killed many people, especially from the Jewish community. You have the leader of USSR, Joseph Stalin. He killed so many Muslims and so many people in Siberia and in the gulags. 40 million people plus. The founder of the current Chinese Republic, Mao Zedong, killed over 50 million people. You go to Cambodia, in 1975 to 1978, there's a man called Pol Pot in the Khmer, it's called the Khmer Rouge. Khmer Rouge, yes. He killed maybe 3 million, 4 million people. Yes, over 100,000 of them were Muslims. Killed many people. You go to Rwanda, they have museums where they have skulls of people. They tell you in one church, 80,000 people lost their lives. You ask them what happened, they tell you Our fellow brothers, they attacked us, they killed us, and we rushed to the churches for help, and the people of the church also called the people to murder us. This is clear what happened in Rwanda. Very heartbreaking history. So, Ikhwanifillah, the last 100 years have been one of the most bloodiest episodes of human history. And this is from the signs of the Day of Judgment. The Prophet ﷺ says, لا تقوم الساعة حتى يكثر الهرج. The hour will not come until there's a lot of killing. In a different hadith he says, that also, he explains further the issue of killing. He says, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ بِقَتْلِكُمُ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. It is not you Muslims killing the enemies of Islam. وَلَكِنْ قَتْلِ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا. Also you Muslims, you shall kill each other. You shall fight each other. In a different hadith he says, حَتَّى لَا يَدْرِ الْقَاتِلُ الْمَقْتُولُ فِي مَقُتِلُ. Even the person who is killed, he does not know who is killed. In a different hadith he says, الْقَاتِلُ وَالْمَقْتُولُ فِي النَّارِ. He says, the killer and the one who's killed, they're both in the hellfire. The Sahaba, they asked, we understand why the killer is in the hellfire, but why is the one who is killed also in the hellfire? كَانَ حَرِيصٌ عَلَى قَتْلِ أَخِيهِ. He was ready to kill his brother in any way. He was just overpowered and he lost the battle. Otherwise his intention was to kill his brother. So from the signs of the Day of Judgment, generally speaking, there shall be a lot of killing. And also in the Islamic Ummah, there shall be a lot of infighting, there shall be a lot of wars, and we shall kill our own fellow brothers. I mentioned this also in the previous lecture. Make sure when you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment, you do not have the blood of anyone on your hands. You do not have the blood of anyone in your hands. This is very important. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he was stabbed, he was assassinated. The first question he asks, who stabbed me? They tell him, you were stabbed by a man called Abu Lu'lu al-Majusi. The person who killed you is a man called Abu Lu'lu al-Majusi from the lands of Persia. He says, Alhamdulillah, the person who stabbed me is not a person who has made one sujood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For I do not want on the Day of Judgment to have a debate, a back and forth with this person. This is a clear case for me. So you as a Muslim, always, dear brother, you do not want a case on the Day of Judgment, and more particular a case with your fellow Muslim. For if you kill a person, the Prophet ﷺ, he says in authentic hadith, لا يزال المؤمن في فسحة من دينه ما لم يصب دما حراما. A Muslim still has leeway with regards to his faith. You have stolen, you have insulted, you have done this ma'asi, you have done this thing. Inshallah khair. But if you start on the issue of blood, then you have kept in yourself in the most dangerous place possible. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says that the very first thing the people shall be asked on the Day of Judgment is regards the salah. In a different hadith, he says the very first thing the people will be asked on the Day of Judgment is regarding blood. Are we together? Is there a conflict between these two hadiths? One hadith says, the very first thing you shall be asked on the Day of Judgment is regarding salah. In another hadith he says, alayhi salatu wasalam, the very first thing you shall be asked on the Day of Judgment is regarding blood. Is there a conflict amongst these two hadiths? Where are the ulama? No, there's no conflict. Why? Because the very first thing you as a Muslim shall be asked with regards to the right of Allah is salah. With the right of your fellow man is regard blood. So be very careful with regards to blood. The second thing, you should not meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you have any dhulma of a person. Especially with regards to property. The shaheed, the martyr, shall not enter Jannah. And this is a person who's promised the highest levels of Jannah. He shall not enter Jannah because of a debt. What about myself and yourself who have not reached the level of a shaheed? So beware of these two things, especially the blood and the property of people. Be very careful. Do not participate in anything. People are fighting. My tribe, my political party, my country, whatever. Do not participate in blood. Keep away as much as possible from the issue of blood. Only if you have something like self-defense, you can argue your point in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be ready to argue your point if you spill any blood. Oh Allah, this man wanted to kill my wife. He wanted to do something to my wife. I was defending my honor. Be ready with your answer if you spill any blood. So from the signs of the day of judgment is that there shall be a lot of killing. And also we've seen in this century nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons. The Prophet ﷺ says that this ummah is an ummah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has encompassed with His mercy. This is an ummah marhuma. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised this ummah Jannah. The Muslims will enter Jannah, either directly, straight to Jannah, or they'll have to take the long route. They have to enter the hellfire, thumma yadkhuluna al-Jannah. But this ummah has been promised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أنهم يدخلون الجنة. من قال لا إله إلا الله خالصا في قلبي دخل الجنة. The Muslims will enter Jannah. However, as long as we're in this dunya, three things will befall us as an ummah. He says عليه الصلاة والسلام إنما عذابها في القتل والزلزال والفتن. The adhab, the punishment of this ummah is in three things. Number one, al-qatl, they shall kill each other. And number two, al-zilzal, many Muslims will lose their lives because of earthquakes. And number three, al-fitan, they shall have trials and tribulations amongst themselves. So ikhwani fillah, these are the signs of the day of judgment we're taking today. Number one, we took the Arabs will compete in building the tallest buildings, and we mentioned examples of that in our time. Number two, the female slaves will give birth to their masters. And number three, there shall be a lot of killing, there shall be a lot of genocides, a lot of murder. We shall look inshallah at the forthcoming signs in the forthcoming lecture. Wallahu alam, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.